Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. The time has finally come. I am at long last allowed to talk about my experiences with Chrono Odyssey. It is no secret that I was in the NDA test prior to this one, about somewhere in February that it happened, and then now they gave us recently access to the game for 2 days to record footage for videos and whatnot. So in that test alone, I've put in 35 hours of gameplay, and I did not AFK during those 35 hours. I was in the game playing, exploring, and focusing on a lot of different things. So I am here today to talk to you about my experiences with the game. Now, I do want to preserve people's feeling of exploration and feeling of discovery with the game, so I won't be giving you any guides or any very, specific tiny little details, but mostly just showing you footage from the game that I took of the world and of various things, and giving you sort of my first impressions of the game and telling you sort of what you can expect in the game as well. But I do want to preserve your feeling of discovery of the game first and foremost, so don't worry, there's not going to be major spoilers for the game in this. You're still going to be able to figure everything out yourself. So with that being said, let's get into it. So we had a lot of limits to our experience, because as a reminder, this game isn't just being ported to our region as we're used to as MMO players, where it's existed in Korea for a couple of years. It's being actively developed right now as we speak, both for our region and for Korean region. So this is one of those rare times where we get to actually experience the game for the first time with every other region as well. So keep that in mind. I think the primary thing that people kind of center their curiosity around is the combat and the classes and how the game feels. So from my perspective, it felt very Soulsy in terms of, there's dodging, blocking, and parrying with your block, as well as countering. Certain classes are able to cast a skill, and if you get hit during that skill animation, you will then cast a retaliate. It's not the same thing as parrying, because parrying is tied to blocking with your shield, but blocking at a very specific time, just like in a Souls game, where if you block at a very specific time, you actually counter with a retaliate, the way you see here on screen. Now, the classes that we had access to were restricted, so we only had access to Swordsman, Berserker, and Ranger classes. The other three were restricted in the time of the playtest, and they're going to be for your playtest as well. We're going to have the same experience as I had with the game. So my class can actually tank, because out of the 3 weapon choices on your class, you can equip 2 weapons, and from there you kind of create your build, and you're not locked into it at any point. I can put on the Great Sword if I'm not using Great Sword, or Twin Blades if I'm not using Twin Blades, but the reality is you're going to put on your 2 weapons, and that's kind of where your build is going to come from. What I've noticed is certain weapons have certain types of skills. So, for example, with my Sword and Shield weapon, I was playing primarily Swordsman with Great Sword and Sword and Shield. Those were my 2 weapons, and the Sword and Shield weapon did have certain skills that could generate threat, but it also had certain skills that could reduce threat. So just because you have your Sword and Shield weapon on doesn't mean that you have to be a tank in the game. And so, speaking of the crafting windows, I was able to look at the possible stats and the kind of base stats that it was able to craft with. And so certain other classes have weapons that craft with a healing stat on them that maximizes their healing by a certain percentage, which means that some classes are going to be able to heal. That doesn't mean that they're going to be dedicated healers, because, like I said, you always have 2 weapons on. So it's not going to be like a very dedicated Holy Trinity in the game. It's going to be more so that certain classes will have access to certain healing skills. Now, when it comes to creating your build in the game, when it comes to classes, you are able to choose from a variety of different skills. You can choose a bunch of different skills, so you have access to 4 skill slots, so you choose which 4 skills to put on there. So you don't have to, just because you equip a weapon that can have healing skills, you may not have to only choose healing skills. I haven't seen any of the healing weapons. I haven't seen what they look like and what skills are tied to them, but my assumption is, based on how the Swordsman class worked, is that even if, like on a Paladin or on a Sorceress, even if you equip a weapon that has healing on it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to have to equip on that weapon 4 healing skills. So just keep that in mind. Usually when they talk about, like in videos and in the interview that they did with Canon, they talk about how there is capability for tanking, there is capability for healing, but they don't want to lock people into the Holy Trinity roles, and that's sort of how they approached that. From what I've seen, the actual variety of mobs was really good. There wasn't a lot of copy-pasting going on. I didn't feel like I was fighting the same mob here in this zone that I was fighting just 2 zones ago or whatever. and there's different kinds of mobs as well. You got big world bosses that you absolutely cannot solo, you need other people for it. You have elites that you can solo, but it's going to be really hard for you. You have regular mobs, you have stronger mobs. There's a lot, I don't know what they're actually called in the game, like specifically in the game terminology, but there are a lot of different varieties of mobs, not just in terms of looks, but in terms of their functionality. Like some of them are, you got the poundy targets, and you got the world bosses, you got the elites, you have like region bosses, whatever. Like there's a lot of different kinds of mobs in the open world for you to tackle, so that's going to be fun. Played mostly solo because my focus with this playtest was reading the lore and reading the story in preparation for my gigantic lore video that I'm putting out in a few days, so stay tuned for that. But I was playing entirely solo, so I didn't do some of the group content, but personally I can tell you that I didn't feel handicapped by that. I was still able to fully enjoy the game. There wasn't a situation where I was in like one of the later zones and I was like dying to the mobs there, because I still had access to all the gear that I would have wanted to craft. Now, I don't know if that changes later on. That stuff we can only speculate because, again, like I said, we're limited to a certain level cap. So I know level 20 sounds very low to most MMO players, and I can tell you that in this game, that is a lot. Leveling in this game doesn't work the same way that a lot of us MMO players are used to, where you just kind of blow through the fucking MSQ the entire time, and then you kind of get to max level and then the game opens up. It feels like the devs want you to start experiencing a lot of the elements of the game early on. So you're going to be gathering, you're going to be crafting. I mean, there's gear rewards from various different quests and stuff in the game, but overall, I would say I didn't feel hindered from being like a solo player at all. Now, going off of what I just said, where I was focusing mostly on the lore, it's hard for me to say that I was focusing on the story. And this is something that you might remember from the video that they put out from the developer interview. There is not really like an MSQ in the game. There are definitely quests, like the game has quests. You have a quest journal and everything. But when it comes to especially like the storyline, your main story quest is to just upgrade your chronotector. So imagine if Elden Ring had a quest journal and the only main story quest it had was defeat your next boss. That's it. That's the main story. Like every other piece of like lore or story is kind of like, it's similar to World of Warcraft, the way you kind of just pick out a zone and you go to that zone and you explore there, and that zone has an entire story of its own. So a lot of the story was told through exploration and through kind of environmental storytelling in a way. The side quests, if you do end up paying attention to the story when the game comes out or in the playtest, it sort of gives you the context of why you would want to go there. Like you talk to a girl and she's like, oh my god, I'm the only survivor and this and this happened. And then you go to check it out, you go to that zone and you check out what happened. And then there, kind of from like surrounding clues, optional things, you figure out what happened on your own. So it's kind of like that. So you still have a quest journal, but the way the story is told to you is very environment based. Like you pick up little letters, a letter that didn't reach its target, so you read it and you figure out what happened here, or you like kill a mob and they drop a certain item and you like hover over it or whatever. So it's told in a much more interesting way. You're not just kind of sitting there and shift G'ing through the main story, because the main story is really just go and defeat the next boss that'll allow you to upgrade your next chronotector. And that's not something that you can just do like step 1, step 2, step 3. When you kill your first boss for the chronotector, the second boss is going to be a lot harder. So in that meantime, it feels like they want you to kind of explore the world and do other things, gather, craft, do bounty quests, explore the world. Even just regular world exploration is rewarding, because kind of like in Red Dead Redemption, you're riding out in the world and you ride by like a broken carriage and there's a person there, and then they're being interrogated. And a quest pops up and it's like, you can do this quest right now while you're next to it, and it's not a quest that'll lead anywhere. It's just like hey, this person seems to be in trouble, let's go help him out. And then you get loot from that. So there's kind of like these little pop-ups as well. So there's a lot of emphasis on environmental storytelling, and just kind of, if you're not into the story of the game, your experience is going to be based on exploration a lot more than it is going to be based on following the quest marker onto the next area, the next zone, the next step, kill 12 of these guys, do 12 of this, gather whatever. It's not really like that. It's a lot more freeform, and it's a lot more interesting that way, because the world really speaks for itself. I thought the game was beautiful. The cosmic horror feeling is really there. There's these massive structures. You've got this medieval world of Chrono Odyssey with, you know, the regular medieval like little towns and like the mages and whatever, and then the taverns, and then you've got these pretty much space aliens and their massive, gigantic metallic structures like hovering in the sky. The cosmic horror element is really there, and it makes exploration really, really cool, really worth it in this game. So that's kind of why I'm avoiding giving you too much footage, avoiding giving you too many spoilers about this, because you're going to really enjoy this, I think. Even whether or not you're somebody who's going to enjoy the story itself or the lore, you're just going to skip through all of this. Regardless of that, just exploring the game and seeing all the different zones and the mobs associated with it and the different like kind of environmental little clues and little landmarks, it's going to be really cool. You're going to love it. I can give you one little example of one little minor side quest. So you pick up a side quest in the main town where the guy is like, hey, I want to make a soup out of spider legs. And there's this one spider cave that I've heard of somewhere out there. I heard rumors where there's a big-ass, fat-ass spider with nice, delicious, fat spider legs. I don't know where it is, but if you bring me some of those legs, I'll give you a recipe and I'll teach you how to make that fucking soup. So you pick up that quest, and it kind of goes into your quest journal and says, find the cave. Now, eventually you're gonna find that cave when you get, like, kind of closer into vicinity of it. That quest is gonna pop up and be like, oh, I think this is where the cave is. You're gonna go there naturally regardless, but there are NPCs at the time that were next to me that are kind of like just like at the bar sort of hanging out, and one of them was boasting that he's seen a big spider. So these NPCs are not marked by the quest. The quest didn't tell me to speak to them, but I still, because I was focusing on the lore and like the story in the playtest, I came up to them and I spoke to them, and one of them was boasting that he killed one of the spiders there. And then when I spoke to him, he says, hey, don't tell anyone this, but I didn't actually kill them. I did see the spider, so I'm just telling everybody I killed them, but the cave was around this area, so it doesn't narrow down your quest marker at all, but if you read the text, he says that it's down by the river. If you follow the river down south, the cave is somewhere over there, so it gives you... You're rewarded for like sniffing around in the game and kind of being curious. So like if you don't do that, you'll still would have found the cave eventually, because you'll go to that area kind of naturally for other stuff. But it was really cool to see that, because these NPCs, they were not marked by the quest. The quest wasn't telling me to speak to them. I just talked to them because I wanted to, and by reading their dialogue, I was able to narrow down where I should go for the quest. So that was really cool, just to give you one little minor example of a quest that's not like super spoilery. The world itself feels alive. There's a lot of different landmarks. It's not just like one foresty area and all you see is just a bunch of trees and a bunch of bushes. Like there's random little like gravestones here and there, and some of them is not even explained. Like you just kind of come up to it and there is nothing there. Like you come up to it and you think, oh, there must be like a quest here or something. No, it's just a statue. Some of it is broken. It's an entrance to the cave. Maybe there's like a mini boss in there or something, but it's just, the world is there's not too much repetition in the world, and it doesn't feel bland as to where it's just one massive field and there's random mobs here and there and that's it. I said earlier there's not too much repetition in the mobs, but it feels like it makes sense, like the world feels very real. Like it's just, there's a lot of things that add to the character of the world, and it, to me at least, felt real. I don't know, I might be a little bit biased because I knew the lore kind of going into the game, so maybe it made a little bit more sense to me, but the world felt very real and very, very nice to explore. So whether or not you're somebody who cares about the story itself, you're gonna enjoy exploration, and it is heavily rewarded as well. The world is entirely seamless, so it is like Black Desert, where you can go from all the way on the left of the map to all the way on the right of the map with not a singular loading screen. There are teleportations between little zones, but there aren't too many of them. You can teleport from all the way in the western part to like the central part, and then maybe all the way eastern part, and then maybe the southern part, but there aren't too many of these teleports. They exist, the access to them is free, you don't need like any extra currency for it, but it kind of just, it helps you navigate a very, very massive map. But that's all it is. You're not going to be teleporting directly to the quest. You're still going to have to explore, and there's not... The only time you enter into a loading zone is when you teleport and when you go to the Citadel, which is kind of where you upgrade your Chronotractor and stuff. It's sort of, the Citadel in this game is sort of the equivalent of the Round Table Hold in this game, so to speak. So if you want to not use teleportation ever, you can quite literally explore the world and not have to deal with a single loading screen ever. And when you do get a loading screen, I felt that it was reasonably short. Like, it wasn't, I didn't have to sit there and wait several minutes in some other games. Progression in the game is reliant on crafting, so you're not just going to be the game. First of all, it's a sandbox game. I think by now I can say this without a shadow of a doubt. It is a sandbox game. It's not a theme park where you make your character and then you just have to shift G through the quest, and the game itself opens up only when you hit max level. The game starts very early, around like level 3, because that's when you get to like your first town, and that's when you unlock crafting and gathering and whatever. The systems for crafting and gathering, they're not complex, they're not hard. They're very easy, they're straightforward. And it feels like, from from my experience, it feels like the devs really want you to start interacting with the game as much as possible, as early as possible, which to me is a good thing. Now, I know to some people that might sound like a bad thing, because some of you might not like life scaling and crafting and gathering and all that stuff, so which is perfectly fine. You don't have to do that, because a lot of quests and a lot of like little mini bosses, mini like elites and stuff, they drop side quests in the world, all of that stuff, it drops gear as reward. So you don't have to do that if you absolutely just hate the idea of picking up a little bush and then using it to craft something. You don't have to interact with that system, but I feel like it's more interesting if early on in the game, questing isn't the only thing that's available to me. I can go do other stuff if I want to, and it all contributes to your XP bar. So even if you're out in the world gathering bushes, chopping down trees, breaking down stone, whatever, like doing all of that, even the action of crafting a piece of gear, all of that gives you experience to your class. Not just, it gives you experience to your life scaling also, but it gives you the actual contribution to your XP bar. So you will level up from doing that as well. So that's good. That's just about as much as I want to say about the game, because again, the playtest is going to be happening soon. You're going to have access to all the same stuff that I had access to, and I don't want to spoil the game too much for you with a bunch of guides on like how to do this, how to do this. The playtest only lasts a couple of days, so we don't have a lot of time to like work with it. So I would strongly urge you to preserve that feeling of exploration and that feeling of discovery of the game, because that's what's so interesting about it. This is a very rare time for us MMO players where we're getting an MMORPG that's coming out for us at the same time as it's coming out in Korea. This is not another one of those where it existed in Korea for a year or two, but when it gets ported over to us, we have 5 million different guides from the KR players telling us exactly what to do, spreadsheets, efficiency to the max, you gotta go here, you gotta go here, you gotta go here. So don't worry about that too much, especially for the playtest. Enjoy the game, explore it. It is a beautiful experience. Visually stunning game. If you enjoy cosmic horror, you're gonna really, really love the game. I would advise you to look up at the sky often, because sometimes if you're looking down for too long, you're gonna miss some of the crazy alien structures that are just ominously hovering up in the sky. But I'm gonna be streaming the playtest on my Twitch at twitch.tv/LaufieLOL. With everybody, we're gonna be exploring the game together as well, and I have 2 more videos coming out before the playtest. One is going to be a massive 35-minute lore video covering all the lore that sets up the setting of the game before you start playing your character. So it's not like a story summary of anything, so it's not gonna spoil your experience, kind of like reading the story and reading all the quest journals and the little environmental things in the game. It sets up what happened and how the world came to be and why we are here and why we're doing what we're doing. Yes, I'm going to be streaming the playtest on my Twitch. Again, twitch.tv/LaufieLOL. Subscribe to the YouTube because more videos are coming. And my focus with my content is going to be on the story and the lore as much as anything else. So if you are somebody who is curious about what it is that happens in the game, but you don't really want to put in the time or don't really want to figure that out yourself, I'm going to be putting out a bunch of videos that explain everything in the future, not just before the playtest, but kind of throughout the game as well. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you on stream. Goodbye!